Okay, all right, okay.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to this second in the series of webinar that was put together in commemoration of the World Environment Day, which was on the 5th of June, and it was Time for Nature as the theme, and which focused on biodiversity conservation. So my name is Damola Abudu. I work with Chevron Nigeria Limited, and I'm an enthusiastic environmentalist. And I still continue to learn from those that have been in the industry for a while. The theme for the conference organized by the NES, the 2-day conference, I mean, we had building a sustainable future post-COVID-19 era. Please, can everyone put their phones on mute? Can you please mute your phone unless you're talking? Can we all just do that? Thank you very much. So the initial webinar, which took place on the 12th of June, at Building a Sustainable Future post-COVID-19 era. A lot of things have happened in the last few months, and we've learned from that. So today's topic is environmental governance in Nigeria. And it's a very important topic. And I'm sure we'll all have something to learn and something to contribute around that. So the objectives for today's webinar is we want to try and establish a nexus between the environment and the pandemic that was dealt with at the last one. And we want to look at creating network of individuals, firms, organizations that would be committed to sustainability of our environment. That's very key for us. We also want to initiate sustainable campaigns for healthier environments as we move on. We want to raise awareness, continue to raise awareness around the need for environmental sustainability. And that's why the NES has put together this series of webinar. And we hope that the NES would continue to do that, not just in celebration of the World Environment Day. We've learned a lot from the COVID, how we can get things done and reach a wider audience. And we hope we're able to do that. So like I said before, this is being put together by the Nigerian Environmental Society. And the society is a professional, non-profit oriented, non-governmental body committed to advocacy and action towards environmental protection, sustainable environmental development, and promotion of professionalism, environmental professionalism in the country and globally as well. And it is the premier society that is recognized as far as environmental management is concerned and the watchdog for environment in Nigeria. Inaugurated in 1985 in Lagos, it's the largest environmental NGO in Nigeria and is grown to 21 branches in Nigeria, and it plays an active role in the local and international environmental programs. So, shepherding the activities of the Nigerian Environmental Society is Dr. Dorothy Bassi. I'm sure you all have met her at different events, and she's very active in this space. She's been there for a while. She's the president, and she's a fellow of the society. She has 25 years experience in the oil and gas sector. If you've been in the oil and gas sector, you've experienced Dr. Bassi in our element. And she's the strategic officer for Fortnum Global Service Limited, which is a health, safety, and environment consultancy and training firm. She's also a fellow of several other professional bodies, and she's a highly sought after resource person. And I'm glad to say she's also a philanthropist. And she's got a wide network, quite extensive and impressive, and always seeking new frontiers to conquer. She's very excited. She's very committed to improving environmental sustainability in the country. And I want to ask Dr. Bassi to please give us a welcome remark. Thank you. Dr. Bassi.
Yes.
So we'll take your remark.
My laptop is so sensitive. So I'm going to watch how I touch that button. Thank you so very much,
Okay.
Damola, for your opening, for the introduction. We haven't really started because you haven't introduced our guests, and they should be introduced very, very quickly, even before me. However, not to waste too much time, I welcome everybody here, especially those of us who have been here for the past 35 minutes, testing the audio and all of that. Today's topic is very, very dear to me, and I'm sure to a lot of us joining. And that is because, yes, indeed, we have environmental laws and regulations. We have several agencies in the country, oversight agencies in the country, but we need to understand how these work out in terms of protecting and preserving our environment. And when we talk about governance, we're talking about structures, we're talking about standards, we're talking about implementation, we're talking about goals and targets. So I'll just leave it there because I have very senior colleagues here and they will be doing a lot of justice to the topic. And so I hand over again to our amiable moderator, Damola. She's one of our young environmental professionals, and I can go and sleep actually. So welcome everybody. I have seen Professor Alo, chairman of the board of directors, Dr. Jerry Wankwo, and everybody. You're most welcome, and please, please, please join in the conversation. That is the essence of our series. And as Damola has challenged me and challenged NES, we're going to be having this series talks every month, once every month. COVID, as negative as it may have come to us, has presented us with several and very veritable opportunities to do things better. And for us as an NGO, the outreach, which is one of our focus areas, is what we're going to be focusing on to ensure that everybody comes on board, everybody partakes in this discussion, because at the end of the day, the environment is one. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bassi. So I'm just going to go through our seasoned list of panelists, and I believe they were selected because they were the best that would deliver this panel, and we would get what we need to go home with. I'll start with the ladies first, as they say. We have Dr. Mrs. F.C. Mogo. She's the head of Marine Environmental Management Department in Nemasa, and she's the founder of she's the president of the Africa Marine Environmental Sustainability Initiative, which is a non-profit organization which is aimed at achieving clean oceans, not just in Africa and beyond. She's a seasoned technocrat of over 33 years in the public sector, a member of the United Nations IMO, International Marine Organization, experts on marine environment protection. She currently chairs the correspondence group on marine litter management of IMO, and she's the national focal point on some of the conventions. She's a negotiating team member of the Abidjan Convention on Regional Seas of West and Central African region. She's on the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and one of the national drivers of the blue economy, but to mention a few. Welcome, Dr. Mogo. And we also have Professor Nuhu. Professor Mohammed Bashir Nuhu is got a long list of qualification, MNES, FNIVS, amongst others. Is the director for the Center for Human
Damola, unmute your speaker.
How these institutions see themselves acting.
become mute?
So I think she's having a network issue. Yeah. Dr. Damola, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Is everybody hearing me?
We can hear you, Damola. You're just not clear. We can hear you. Yes, now.
We can hear.
I seem to be mute. No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me
yes, we
clearly now?
can.
Yes, we can.
Loud,
I can hear everybody.
loud and clear. Go ahead, please.
Damola, go
Hello?
ahead. Damola, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello?
That-
Go ahead.
you.
For today is Engineer Okoro. All right. Our key panelist today is Engineer Okoro, and is a seasoned petroleum engineer. Is a petroleum engineer. I'm talking. Can you hear me? Of
Yeah, we can hear you. Just
oil
that you're breaking. You're breaking.
oil prospecting, exploration, exploitation, and production in Nigeria oil and gas industry. He has 34 years experience working for Shell production and exploration in. Can you hear me
We
better?
can hear you.
Can you hear
Damola,
me?
we can hear us.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
hear you. I can hear you.
better. Okay. So beyond Shell, Engineer Okoro served as group executive Director for the New Business Development and Integration for ETA Zuma Group of Companies, and his focus was on power generation, coal-fired power plants for Imo and Kogi states, respectively. The company's focused on that, and he has interest in solid minerals exploration and mining. You're welcome, Engineer Okoro. So to kick off the discussion, we would like to invite Engineer Okoro, and he has a presentation that he would like to share with us. Engineer Okoro, can you please bring up your presentation?
Okay.
So we all remember the topic for today, environmental governance in Nigeria. Audiences are required to please leave their questions in the comment section. We'll get to a time where we can have that after the panel discussion, and also to keep your phones muted during the session. We'll start with the key discussants, and sir, you have 10 minutes to take us through your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. It looks like I need that same help to say presenting. Can I be helped?
Yes, so please just beside turn on captions, you will see present now.
Okay.
So
Resume your presentation. Yep. Resume presentation.
okay.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay. I then minimize this so you can see my screen. Does everybody see
Yes,
my screen?
Yes.
Hello?
You can see
Fantastic.
your screen,
Okay.
sir.
Let me quickly rush it.
We
Yeah.
can.
I said
ahead,
the
Engineer.
topic for discussion is environmental governance in Nigeria, the challenges, the gaps, and suggested solution going forward. In doing this, I want us all to focus our eyes, or keep our eyes and focus on the anticipated passing of the Institute of Environmental Practitioners IAPN bill for Nigeria, which we have been pursuing. I dare say that there is very strong hope that that bill will be passed soon. There have been some minor technical delays, and Dr. Kobia, who has been at the head of pursuing this, can tell us more, but we're optimistic it's going to happen. So for this webinar, what my interest, our objective is to call at the attention of NES and its members to the enormous responsibilities and challenges and the tasks ahead for NES leadership and its members. The reality is that I want us to recognize what lies ahead for us. In doing this discussion, I want to look at certain headings and issues for consideration. One of them, the first one, is the regulatory framework of environmental management in Nigeria. Then we'll go to environmental regulations and standards. Then we look at environmental practitioners in Nigeria. And then my fourth section will be environmental education in Nigeria. So going back to the first, which is the regulatory framework, I want to point us to the Nigerian National Environmental Regulators, and we know them, at least Federal Ministry of Environment, the NOSDRA, NESDRIA, the state, local government, ministries, departments of environment, the Department of Petroleum Resources for the oil and gas industry, and various others. I also want to point us to other related organizations that also have impact on environmental management and regulation in Nigeria, including MDAs for health, the ministries, departments, and organizations on environment, for health, environmental health, public health, the SON, the Standard Organization of Nigeria, NDLE, NAFDAC. They all have aspects of that touch on what is environment and what we're doing. And there are many others. Now, Having said this, it then raises a few questions which we should keep in mind. The questions I have raised here are open-ended, and that is on purpose, with intention that it will call for debate. This open-ended discussion calls for debate and discussions. First is, are the respective operations and activities and efforts of these regulators in sync or at crossroad? Are there conflicting roles, multiple regulations in the system and in the nation and in the country, in all these multiple regulators as it stands up for the environment? How do we bring these regulators together for seamless operations in pursuit of an integrated common national goals, deliveries, and outcomes? Now, these questions recognize that there are issues related to the management. There are real conflicts and there are multiple regulations, which at the end of the day, it's a duplication of effort. Are these regulators adequately resourced? And when I say resourced, in terms of staffing, in terms of funding, in terms of infrastructure and facilities, for effective performance and discharge of their responsibilities, their functions and roles. Truth is, yes, they are not. And those are the issues for discussion. What do we then do? Are the existing governance structures, because everybody is running his own structure, adequate, and do they enable seamless operations amongst the regulators for achieving the national environmental goals? Truth is, the governance structures are not seamless. And it goes to buttress what I said earlier about multiple regulations and conflicts in role. Having said that, I want to leave it there. So the intention being that it opens up discussions as we come back for it. And I will urge everybody to please, let's make it participatory. We can go line by line to discuss this. But let me just go down on the presentation. The environmental regulations and standards. The question is thrown up again, open-ended. Do we have a set of unified environmental regulations and standards in Nigeria? If not, how do we realize this? I have seen, particularly, I worked in the oil industry, and I saw lots of conflict between, for example, the DPR and Federal Ministry of Environment, as well as NOSDRA, who had oversight on the. And you start wondering why in a country like this, why we should have these multiple organizations supervising the same industry. I have been all over the world on environmental issues in the UK, in the US, Australia, Malaysia, that's the Asia and all that, and America. And you find that there is a focused supervision. Everything draws from, if I take America, for example, you have the EPA, and every state draws from that. They may have modifications, but everybody's aligned to achieving the same objectives set by the National Environmental Protection Agency. Do we, as governments, citizens, and corporate organizations in Nigeria, do we own, defend, protect, obey, and live by these regulations and standards? The answer is left for all of us to say, but if you ask me, yes, there is a lot of need to make sure that this becomes our regulation, and we defend it at all levels, corporate organizations inclusive, where we don't allow external influence or manipulations not to achieve the results. Because if we were doing what we are supposed to do, we won't have all the myriads of problems in this country. If we are doing all we're supposed to do, we won't be having our countries, our cities dirty with waste management being a problem. So there are issues. So we don't own them. We don't really run this country based on what we've purportedly put across as our laws. So who is regulating and enforcing what? Those are the issues to look at moving forward. Like I said earlier, I point all these things because we have enormous task as Nigerian environmental society, if we occupy our pride of place to drive these subjects to make sure that we realize the harmony we're talking about. Are the efforts of the regulators working? Are we getting expected positive results? I think the answer is no. It's not. We're not. Until we're doing something, but there's room for a lot of improvement, enhancement, and let regulators have bite. Then they need to be able to bite and get things done. Not necessarily harassing people, enabling organizations, individuals, and government agencies to do what they're supposed to do for the rest of the country. Then we talk about environmental practitioners. It's a very big issue. I still recall so many years ago when I was working with Professor Law, and we had some discussions in Lagos State University, where we held an environmental practitioners conference. And so the question we keep asking ourselves is, who is an environmental professional or environmentalist in Nigeria? Are they the scientists, the engineers, the lawyers, the economists and accountants, and others? The reality is that there are so many, the environment is so wide. And so, but we cannot but accept that people are working from various angles. So we have environmental engineers, environmental scientists, environmental lawyers, environmental economists, and the rest of them. There are many. Environmental geology. I group all scientists in that one basket. And I group all engineers who are also scientists in a basket, but they also have lawyers. We have economists. Do we currently have environmental impostors as practitioners in Nigeria? The answer is yes, because that's why we need regulation, and that's why we need to manage the process to eliminate these people. And if we have to achieve, as we go on, you will see it, what I call the environmental ethics of the profession. How do we currently have do we currently have environmental impostors, and how will they be managed and be eliminated from the system? There's this environmental certification. Right now, if you go to do anything, job in the oil industry or elsewhere, you are supposed to have been certified that you are a member of that NOSDRA, the Federal Ministry of Environment, or DPR has certified you. Why should we need multiple certification? Shouldn't we have one-stop one-stop shop where you just get certified and you are ready, you are seen as a professional in environment within the country? So the question is, this certification, who should issue it? And like I said, we need to look into it. Perhaps we need a one-stop shop to make sure it happens, to avoid multiple. It's even more expensive for the contractors, for individuals to have multiple registrations. It's not cost effective. We need to institute an environmental governing council for this country. And I say that because it all begins to look like where NES will also have to play a very important role in making it happen. Where should it reside? Is it in the ministry? Is it an independent body? Is it NES? Those are things we need to be looking at driving going forward. Ethics of the profession and their enforcement. I mean, we have examples in this country where there's Nigerian Medical Association, we have the pharmacists, we have the lawyers, Nigerian Bar Association, and we have all sorts of associations that have a governance structure where you look at ethics, where people are deregistered and punished and all that. So, and it's critical if we must achieve this objective. I say that because if we look at the oil industry, for example, I don't believe, or rather, I would want to suggest that there is more that can be done to make sure we meet standards and limits. At times, the operators get their ways because of various reasons. If we have ethics, the operators will not be hiring non-registered environmentalists to carry out environmental jobs in those organizations and generally in the country. If you are not an environmentalist, you are not. It's not just only by your education, but by your certification, because you've been certified that you have competence within you and your organization to be able to render this service. And it provides us room to be able to sanction you or deregister you if you don't perform. We'll find you wanting or cutting corners and doing the wrong thing. Environment science doesn't tell lies, right? You're dealing with scientific figures, you're dealing with laboratory analysis, defined specific outcomes, which are defensible and can be verified. So do we know what the professional are talking about now, ethics of the profession and the enforcement? Do we know what these ethics are? Do they exist as we speak today? What are the sanctions for non-compliance? Who is or will be in charge of managing and enforcing these ethics? These are suggestions and food for thought, for debate and discussion. And like I said, it will help us to refocus our minds to what is coming and what the expectation of us will be moving forward, especially if we have this bill done. So we're not taking on our words. It's enormous, it's big, and it requires a lot of commitment and effort. Fundamental to all these, of course, particularly when I talk about having the environmental regulations and owning them, is the issue of environmental education at all levels, the primary schools, the secondary school, tertiary institutions. How do we achieve this to happen? There is need for us as NES and as a country to begin to review the school curriculums at all levels, at all these 3 levels I've mentioned now, to ensure the inclusion of compulsory and or elective environmental courses in the curriculum, helping us to build the skill base and awareness and training that would demand for the future. And the concept should be to catch them young. When we were in primary school in those days, we used to do general science or health science in school. Hygiene, we studied hygiene as a subject, and it had value. When we talked about water distillation and waste management and all sorts of things. So these are things we need to refocus our minds on. Those are the highlights of what I want to talk about as opening it up. And if you don't mind, then it depends on how the House feels because of time. We might then go into individual discussions of the subjects as presented. I don't know if that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Okoro, for that focused and quick presentation. And you really touched on the key points as far as the environmental governance discussion is about. So I would go to the other discussants. We would open it up for them to contribute. But I took 3 key things, which I guess will be the hinge point for the other discussants. We talked about the multiplicity of environmental agencies that are in charge of environmental governance in country. Are they in sync or are they at crossroads? I would like the other panelists to talk about that. And also, we're talking about environmental practitioners. How do we ensure the competence and capability of environmental practitioners? It's not everybody that studied biology, chemistry, or zoology or microbiology that is really capable of being a professional in that. So I'd also like the panelists to discuss around that. And lastly, you also spoke about environmental awareness and the need for us to kind of influence its being included early in the school curriculum. How do we do that? because you're best when you catch them young, not when we are all grown adults and we formed in all our ways. So I'd like the panelists to talk around all that, and let's take it from there. I would like to call on Dr. Mogo to start the discussion. Is Dr. Mogo on?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Yeah, and thank you, the lead presenter, for the paper. But I'm from the maritime world, and my major concern, first of all, before I will start talking, is about the exclusion of the ocean in our affairs. You know, when we are talking about environmental management, the ocean suffers so much, irrespective of its numerous benefits. But when we talk about the multiplicity of regulators, judging from what we did in NIMASA, we know that every MDA there is important. Every organization is set for a particular mandate. What we tried to do was to look out for those organizations that we must work together, and then we try to strike an MOU with them, so that we should kind of prevent the stress of multiple regulatory burden on the operators, kind of like we try to have one with NOSDRA. I hope I'm audible. Hello, are you hearing me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Like we try
Yes,
to
we
have
can hear you.
a memorandum of understanding with NOSDRA, because we noticed that NIMASA, for example, the organization I work for, Nigerian Maritime Administration and Administration and Safety Agency, is the national administration for the country in issues of marine environment protection. While NOSDRA is the overarching regulatory body when it comes to marine, when it comes to oil spill incidents. And we report to International Maritime Organization, that is the UN arm that that regulates this activity. You know, so what we had to do was to have an MOU with NOSDRA, and we said, "Oh, NOSDRA, we recognize how important your job is, but when it comes to the marine environment, we are like the ambassadors of Nigeria. So we represent Nigeria at the UN level, and we must report to IMO. And no other organization will report to IMO, and IMO will listen." So we now had an MOU with NOSDRA, and we told NOSDRA, when it comes to spill incidents and things like that, this should be your limit, and this is our own. And we really had a memorandum of understanding signed to that effect. After so many battles of trying to reach that, we just got that last year. We also work with Federal Ministry of Environment. NIMASA is in charge of so many conventions that time will not permit me to mention here, like Convention of London Convention that has to do with prevention of dumping of waste and other matters in the marine environment. Yet we have Federal Ministry of Environment that is the focal point for environmental protection in Nigeria. We wrote Federal Ministry of Environment that see our activities as it has to do with this. We also the lead organization now when it has to do with marine litter. What do we do? You're forming a policy. In your policy, we keyed into the policy. It's just each organization that is important, knowing how to situate themselves so that there will not be conflict. Because every organization is important at one level or the other. We have to really appreciate that. Like we have our other maritime other regulators. No, they're not really. We regulate them, but they also regulate some organizations under them, like Nigerian Ports Authority and Nigerian Inland Waterways. They recognize the fact that we are the national administration. So when we are doing activities, we carry them along, and they know the limits where they will have to stop. So I think what NAG will have to do is to still keep to the high-level political forum agenda on kind of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, which says that No one should be left behind. No important agency should be left behind. But NES, Nigerian Environmental Society, can now go a long way by using its position as a neutral organization now to see how we now create awareness and let everybody work together. But we should know our limits, because it will be difficult if we say, for example, that we relieve that responsibility of one agency and give the other. You know, there will even be there will be so much for that organization to do that they may not focus on important things. So it's just for us to see how next will really use this opportunity. Dr. Basti, I thank you so much for making this possible to work and see how we can now call all these agencies together, organizations together, and speak to them and see how we can now have a guideline on implementation of actions now, actually. And the issue of engaging professional bodies, you know, and in the maritime sector, I've actually worked for Federal Ministry of Environment for about 23 years before going to NIMASA. And in NIMASA, you can't come and, in the maritime sector, you can't come and fake it. You can't come and say, oh, that's it will be just a huge lot of embarrassment for whoever. So, you come in there if you know that you are really savvy, because before we engage you, we have to really put you to test, and that is it. So what we have to now do, because from the way the globe is moving now, everybody that can prove anything can just move on and go on, even reach the global arena and make himself or herself relevant. So what we have to do that in the process, kind of there's a way such things help to kind of take care of itself, you know, correct itself. So what we have to do is that, like next again, can also have the professional people, organizations registered with it, and then push them when there is need for that through MDAs, because it will be really difficult for NEST to come and maybe just a guideline again. It may not be a rigid law, because it may be impossible to really implement. Organizations know people that are important to them. Like in when it comes to the maritime sector, the person may not be really an surveyors do things I cannot do. But then they are very, very important to me, because I discuss with them, because they know those areas in the ship where you have to look at when you're talking about pollution, that somebody that is just an environmentalist will not know. So there is always need to partner. Partnership should be the slogan actually now. We should know how to partner, and shouldn't really worry about those ones coming into the scene to play as environmentalists, because the process will surely eliminate them. That is all I have to say now. I hold on and allow other people to talk, and then I'll key in. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr.
Mr.
Mogo.
Damola.
Thank you for your response. Next, we'll have Professor Nuhu, and we would like to get your Yes, let's have we'd like to have Professor Nuhu.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me seize this opportunity to also thank the President NEST for giving us this platform. Arising from the lead speaker presenter, he has raised quite a number of issues, and I like the way Damola summarized them into 3 components. And this, I look at them as clusters of our discussion. First, with respect to multiplicity of roles and responsibilities, which of course is leading to a kind of divergence, conflicts, replicating similar things in different directions. This can be dealt with in terms of reducing the bureaucracy, and as well as looking at the whole regulatory different bodies coming on the same table, having a platform to see how this can be demarcated. We actually need to harmonize all these specific laws, because if you look at the existing regulations, the existing policies, they are so numerous. If you take example with the Nigerian environmental policies, national guidelines in particular, and on standards on environmental protection. It includes so many. We have some on sanitary inspections and premises, waste solid management, school sanitation, pest, vector, and so many other issues. This essentially moving forward, we actually need to harmonize this. There's no country that deals successfully in the field of environment without having a one spot shop document that you call national policy on environment regulations and standards. This will help us to actually implement. And then there's also a disconnect that exists. The community perspectives is not even carried along. Many people meaning the entire people does not even connect to know what all these are talking about. This is within even the expertise, the stakeholders in the industries that are even within this aspect. Now we can move forward by like I said, reducing the bureaucracy, making it more practicable, simple, and accessible. Many people should know what this is doing without, a kind of this duplications. All this can be seemingly, reduced, by giving proper compartment. I had the first discussion talking about MOU among governmental agencies. This is needless. You need right from the day to have all these stakeholders on the table to clearly and unambiguous create boundaries that are seamless. Where you need to dovetail into one, it should be clearly indicated and so specified so that we know where your role starts and where it stops clearly and who takes over from there. This will help us to move forward as a nation. On the aspect of practitioners, there is no country that makes headway without a big umbrella that houses these practitioners, no matter level of specializations. Definitely there must be a kind of a specialization in different perspectives. Some will deal in the marine sector, some will deal with the health sector, some will also deal with the distillation section. So many others, some mechanical aspects. But you need a big umbrella that will checkmate the practices of these practitioners. Now, if a particular practitioner is found erring, who disciplines him? I think the best umbrella is NES, Nigerian Environmental Society, to see how it will have the enabling law, see how to serve as a big umbrella where all practitioners are answerable to this. Within the framework of the governance structure, you will have other specialists that also, a kind of license specializations. If you look at the Nigerian Society of Engineers, they have the civil engineering section, they have a mechanical section, they have the electrical section, they have so many sections, all within the big umbrella that operates. This is to checkmate quackery, to checkmate those who are not really doing the right thing. It is not enough when a contractor of let's assume a particular service provider is found erring, and then you now said, okay, you take him to court, and who now, confiscate his license? Who, take it further to see that he's really dealt with? Now, that will go a long way to have a big umbrella that will basket all various types of, practitioners within having specializations, having, distilled skills that they will be able to handle, irrespective of what other, service consumers will demand in terms of, test running their capacities and other something. This is a kind of what we call doing due diligence. That's what should be a kind of due diligence of a particular service provider. Now, the last aspect of awareness and education, which is very critical, and that is the angle that will even connect the society, the general populace, the catching them young at the primary school, secondary school, having element of what role as an individual, as community, can really play within the big picture called environment. How can you promote it? How can you discharge certain, particular? So this has to go with a lot of framework to be put in place. Just like earlier on suggested, our curriculum must be tinkered with. We must ensure that we have, we take care of the environment. One good example is this COVID-19, where today everybody was asked to stay at home. Many environment were suffering because they don't even have enough trees to provide a kind of fresh air for them. So everything, and there's no steady electricity power supply. So of course, there are a lot of challenges. So we need to connect into our environment. This COVID-19 has really brought the need for us to really bring the people together and connect to the environment and see how we can take care of whatever we do. And every other aspect that functions within the environmental activities need to be educated. The younger ones need to be educated because we need a future for all these things. That's what I call sustainable environment. We need to catch them. We need to take care of now and then plan for the future. Have a bigger picture of what should happen in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And how can we do that? There will not be sustainability without effective and efficient education and awareness with respect to environmental issues. And of course, putting these three contexts together will lead us to having a very reliable, sustainable future, even beyond this era. And that's why we're having all these issues. So we must, as a society, look at how do we contribute to making this effective, making this function as it should be, looking at the changing of our mindset. Some don't want to lose certain powers. These are the issues we have. So many things are into it. That's why you see different organizations, different society, different performing different things, as if we're in a different country. This is one nation. Therefore, we must have a coherent, structure on ground that will make it function effectively and sustainably in a sustainable manner, so that we will be proud of what we have today, and then the future generation will continue from wherever we stop. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Nuhu, for rounding up the panelist discussions around the topic. I think from what all of the panelists have said, we understand that governance is the key to an effective environmental management systems framework in sustainability and conservation. And we need to put a lot of focus on it. So I would go to the questions now. I've asked that everyone please try as much as you can. Post your questions on the chat. We will take them. But the first question that I got, and I would direct that to Engineer Okoro, and it's from Professor Alo, and he does ask that, how do we get rid of imposters from the amongst the environmental practitioners? I've experienced it where everybody believes they're an environmental consultant, and it takes a lot more than just being able to do it. You need to have experts in the different areas, like has been highlighted by the panelists. There's no one person does all as far as environmental consultancy is. And I've seen where consultant companies will come, and the person that is going to, the soil expert, is the vegetation expert, is the air quality expert, is the one to write the report, is the one to do everything. So how do we go about it? What's your take on it? How do we remove imposters amongst the practitioners? How do we weed them out? And I'll direct that at Engineer Okoro.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a big challenge, it's a big issue, but it's doable. I mean, if I take the NMA, Nigerian Medical Association, for example, you cannot practice medicine in this country as a doctor if you are not certified by NMA. So we must be able to, somebody put the environment is too wide. That's I accept. However, I think we have agreed based on the inputs from the panelists and the discussion so far that we need an umbrella body that is recognized, respected, and by the country as that one stop shop for certification and for clearance. It's just certification of environmental practitioners. The problem lies with the practitioners. We should be recognizing who are practitioners, who are mental practitioners in this country. What happens these days? Yes, you build, because environment is multidisciplinary, but we must have the resident competence in the man who owns the organization, or who is the MD, or who is the propeller of the organization, to show that there is competence built in that organization. So how do we eliminate the impostors? Is by making sure there's an environmental practitioners certification process that is transparent, real, and well managed. And like somebody mentioned, it is a role where we think NES will also have a lot of work to do, or rather be driving it as a team. It's going to be challenged. In fact, next, when we form the council and when we form who this certification body is, it's going to be all encompassing. Environment is huge. People are going to, the council or the certification body will be made up of multidisciplinary, experienced people who will look after this. And it's going to be a clear-cut process for making it happen. And I think it is possible. It's something we need to think through. I don't have all the answers, but the major issue is that we need a body to certify environmental practitioners as individuals and as companies to operate in this country. And I feel that NES.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I know you've spoken earlier on about the certification. So I'd just like to go back to our last panelist, Mr. Olowoyo. He's been on both sides. He's had the experience working with consultants and been working for one of our partners in the oil and gas industry. So, Mr. Olowoyo, what's your take looking at the three areas that the other panelists have talked about? We'd like to hear from you, sir. Thank you. Do we have Mr. Olowoyo on? Is Mr. Olowoyo connected?
Yes, I see he's connected, but he's on mute.
Oh.
So maybe we can take the questions when he's able to come back online, then he can.
Okay, please, let's have someone send him an IM or chat. All right, so I also got a question that asked about, do we want to have pricing? Do we want to have a framework for pricing of environmental services? I think they have things like that in the engineering world, where you're talking about structural engineering. There's some costs that I think are fixed. Is this something that we think would help in effective environmental management, having that governance around pricing? Because really, when you have and oftentimes it's a lowest bidder market, but do we want to make sure that we have the right price so that the right quality of work can be delivered, and most importantly, that the work is done? I'll pass this on to Professor Nuhu. And what's your take on this?
Yes, it's to do with pricing and coordinating the cost. It requires special skills. You need to actually know how to drive value from it, and also to understand the connection. So if I get you correctly, because the question was skipping, you're talking specifically about pricing in particular. Is that correct?
Consultant.
Yes. So you see, it depends on the particular assignment that is at hand and the job, the activity that is involved. So it has to look at from different perspective. If it connects to where people have to be moved for instance, permanently, for OSP, for instance, the kind of pricing of for such services and activities will quite be distinctive from another kind of environmental issues. And where it involves easy to do with the psychology, human, involvement of human activities, engagement of various things. The pricing also have to, but again, we still have to go around the same issue. That is to say that we need that professionalism in coming together to define various types of kind of prices and what is acceptable. Because even with other professionals in the built environment, for instance, the pricing is controlled, so to speak. There is allowable benchmark that is established by the Federal Ministry of Works, and Housing, for instance, that guarantee for the professionals to use and operate. Having respective build professionals, associations will have developed a framework. It is looked at so that it is not arbitrarily. So many parameters are looked into, and then of course agreed upon, so that that can now be a threshold for people to adopt in practicing for pricing, so that whatever services or whatever activities that need to be priced need to be standardized. There is a common framework and a platform that needed to be established. And again, that can also be coordinated by NES, for instance, to develop a framework and then bring in all other regulatory bodies together as the stakeholders to look at it. Yeah, I think looking at the nation Nigeria, all of them are agencies relating to Federal Ministry of Environment, some to a very standard NNPC and things. So you need various people to agree from this kind of framework that it should be developed, so that not every contractor or every service provider or any other person at will sit down to say, oh, I'm pricing these things. It has to do with the dimension that is involved. It has to do with the nature of the kind of services to be provided and the kind of people to be engaged and the environment to be operated upon. And it has to do with whether such things will even impact positively or negatively. So it depends on the particular issue at stake. So that's why we cannot just say, oh, have one, parallel, framework for every other thing. So it has to be distinct.
Is any alone?
Done.
Is Mr. Lowe your honor? We can take your contribution. Mr. Lowe, your honor. We can take your contribution.
Okay, so we'll go to the next question, and I'll direct this consultant, and that they are members of NES. And I'd like to add to this, the consultants that we have, like someone had said, I think it was Engineer Okoro earlier on, they would have DPR, they would have FME, and they would need to have NOSDRA. And even in some instances, maybe NESDRA, NIMASA, everybody wants to issue, competence registration certificates to the consultants. We think it's very important, and we've talked about it. We need to get that done, and that is going to be the key to ensuring effectiveness of environmental consultancy. So is it possible, like has been asked, and I'm going to throw it to Dr. Mogo, once somebody has FME certification, even now we can start that, and you have an MOU with NOSDRA, do you accept the certification and that's the way to go? What's your take on that? Can we have Dr. Wogo on? Maybe Dr. Mogo.
Yeah, please can I have the question again? I'm putting my phone on the mute so that I'll hear from you.
Damola, unmute your phone, your speaker.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I was muted.
Hello.
Yes, we're talking about
Damola.
NES being the focal point.
Hello, Damola.
Towards ensuring certification. Mm-hmm. Yes,
madam.
Oh
yeah, I lost you at a point. Yeah, please can I have the question again? Thank you.
Yes, we're talking about the need for a central certification. Like right now, we have consultants having NESDRA, NOSDRA, FME, DPR, and probably NIMASA. You didn't mention about some kind of registration that you do. Is it possible for all the agencies to agree and have this certification, like has been raised by Engineer Okoro and a few other people have muted it, and it would be okay with everyone? Do we see NES being the focal point for coordinating that? And talking from an industry perspective and engaging with consultancy, it's a lot of burden on them having to register annually with all these agencies, even when they're not sure whether the jobs are going to come, and the registration fees are not cheap. So what's your take on it? Is it something we have NES being the focal point and chase that alongside the other efforts to make sure it comes to pass, and we have a central certification for environmental practitioners? Thank you.
Hello. Are you there, Damola?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, talking about that, we are I'm one of the pioneer staff of Federal Ministry of Environment, and I know where we started. And before NIMASA, for example, was created, DPR was already there doing the job of doing the good job anyway of trying to give a certification to work in the marine environment. The problem now, which I feel that NES can also handle, is that now that NIMASA is here, should DPR continue doing the work of NIMASA? The answer is no. So DPR will not, okay, we hands off and hand over to the arm of the agency that should do that. Just like in Federal Ministry of Environment, do we, because should Federal Ministry of Environment now, NOSDRA be now come to be working in the marine environment when the master is also working there? No. That's why we had the MOU with them. So in case of a spill, what we do is that we know that how the situation of the master in the contingency plan, and we go on. with the management of the spill, you know, or actions to prevent pollution in the marine environment. So such that we won't be giving instruction, and NOSDRA will be given to. So what we now do is that we recognize the position of NOSDRA, and anything we do, we pass on the information to NOSDRA. So that's how we've tried to streamline it. It's just last year that we created that. But we have that issue. There's also that issue between NIMASA and DPR, and we've been arranging to have a meeting with them so that DPR will not be the arm of the agency to give approval for facilities to work in the marine environment. Since it's NIMASA, that is the administration that handles it, just to reduce the burden of compliance, you know, on owners of facilities. So, but I feel that NES can do it very, very well. It's just to call all these organizations to a meeting, and everybody will speak. Then we now distill the essential points there, and see how we can now, you know, let everyone understand that we are doing the same. We are working for the same country. We are working for the same purpose. I believe it can work because it worked between us and NOSDRA up till now anyway. I don't know about tomorrow, but I know it will work because we have the parts written down. And if anyone want to derail, we recall the sections, the relevant sections. So NES is in a position to do that. And if we talk about certification, just like the lead speaker said, organizations will not, if I'm asked to give out a job, I have the bill of quantity, and I cannot, during the technical bidding, I cannot allow somebody that doesn't have the competence to come and handle the job. Otherwise, the problem, any problem that will come up from there will be on me. So nobody, no sensible organization will do that. Yeah, but if we now want to regulate regulate the way we are sitting we are talking about, yes, it's the responsibility of NES. NES can do it, but we have to recognize the uniqueness of all the environmental compartments. For example, like I know that the marine environment is not just like terrestrial environment, and that's why we had to push also that the Federal Ministry of Environment should include the method, the guideline for carrying out environmental impact assessment for the marina into our act, EIA Act. And that has been incorporated because you see a typical EIA study for the marine environment, and it will not produce a realistic environmental management plan, you know. So we started pushing for that, and it has been done. We are waiting for the draft document to be
Thank you very much.
Stamped.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Mogo.
Damola,
Is Mr. Olowo you're on now?
Is Mr. Olowo
Yes, I'm here.
My
Yes,
line
I'm
was
here.
off. I'm back now. Sorry. Thank
All
you.
right, so we can take your contribution.
While I was talking, my line went off.
Okay, sir.
Mr. Olowo, you can come on now, please.
Yes, it's on now. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. Of course, I'd like to join others in appreciating the leadership of NES for this program. And oftentimes, we see possibilities and opportunities in whatever problems that come up, just like we're seeing with COVID-19. And this is a good opportunity for us to begin to look at the environmental sustainability that we're looking at for the future. I want to thank also Engineer Okoro for that very well sequenced presentation, particularly as it relates to some of the issues relating to governance. And others have spoken on the summaries that Damola had put together, looking at multiplicity of environmental agencies, looking at competencies regarding the practitioners, and then the issue relating to starting off the environmental awareness, especially from the school period. In the last couple of years now, I've had the opportunity of leading the technical papers subcommittee for for the international conference, the HSE conference, and a lot of emphasis have always been on the multiplicity of the environmental agencies. I personally believe that it has nothing to do with the number of the agencies that we have. If there are re-engineering of the focus and what they are expected to be doing. There have been times when this had been one of the sub-teams, even in our conferences, and then the number of stakeholders have been put together in trying to come up with what a number of people have mentioned, MOU and all the rest of them. For me, and for some of the parts of this, the agency's roles, really, they are very overlapping. And I also want to say that one of the unfortunate aspects of it is that it is not geared solely towards the issues relating to the governance and the supervision. Oftentimes, it is more of revenue generation. And provided that the focus is on revenue in a lot of the cases, trying to bring the agencies together may become a problem. And this is where I find NES playing a major role. I know that every time that we have that discussion in the conference, it is often assumed that DPR is presenting it in order to be able to be the lead or to have most of those things under them. I believe NES can champion a situation where the overlaps can be aggregated and the stakeholders can still come together. We need a legislation that brings all this into segregations and playing complementary roles. In UK, for instance, you have in the environmental law, there are quite a number of societies, NGOs, and the rest of them. But you have a United Kingdom environmental governance structure that is unique and where all actually subscribed to. So I believe it is not DPR, it is not Federal Ministry of Environment, it is not Nostra, it is not NIMASA. I believe NES has to play a very crucial role in making sure that the overlapping aspects of a lot of the regulations are harmonized so as to be able to help the industry or the environmental space, however we look at it. Because in a lot of cases, a lot of activities, a lot of projects are actually slowed down because of moving from one agency to the other, and in most cases, having to repeat your documentation for most of those things. So I believe very strongly that moving on, the NES has to champion a position where we can bring the stakeholders together, and it needs to have more bite. And perhaps we need to look at the regulations and see where NES can actually play a pivotal role, like many other professions that we have. On issues of competencies, of course, everybody believes that they are practitioners in environmental, in environment, if you want to look at it, especially because environment itself is multidimensional and it has so many parts. But for where NES needs to be able to come to identify and possibly begin to set up, a council out of it in order to be able to regulate it, that also has become very necessary in times like this. The environmental space is actually very polluted, from different angles. Everybody is an environmental practitioner. And of course, the definition of what environmental practitioner is also needs to be clearly defined before you begin to think of how you are going to regulate the environment. But certainly, we need to begin to regulate the environment so that we can have a better management and governance of our environment. Of course, I've had quite a number of people talking about environmental awareness. There are the days in the year that we often celebrate. Environmental awareness should go beyond the celebrations of what we currently do. And just like somebody has mentioned, as part of it, we need to be able to start introducing environmental practices even in our in the elementary schools, and allow it to grow onto the tertiary institutions. And one of the things we also can do is to begin to create environmental clubs and societies where this awareness can actually go. And then we need also the environmental society as well to play a major role in this. So I see the environmental society playing a larger role than it has played in the past. And I believe the current leadership, with all the networks all across the entire landscape of environmental practices, will be in a position to handle this. And if we don't have a common environmental governance in the country, regulating it will become, progressively difficult, like we have seen in the past. Everybody is looking at setting up one group or the other to manage the environment. But I think the time has come, and I think the time is now when we begin to look at issues of environmental governance in a more structured way, so as to be able to help the environment. I thank you for having me as part of this panel. Thank you so very much.
Damola.
Thank you very much, Engineer Oloyo, for your contribution. And yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think it would be very, very appropriate to have a few individuals take the floor and contribute before we go back to some questions. Thank you so much.
All right, ma'am. Okay, so just to round up what Engineer Oloyo said, and is important that we note it. It did mention that it's not just the number of agencies, is the fact that some of the agencies are hinged on revenue and not necessarily environmental protection. That is something we need to look at. We know there's always a drive, it's almost a competition, and that shouldn't be. As far as it should be a commitment to environmental protection. That should, we can call you, and this can be organized. So we'd only take 4 contributions, as we have just 2 minutes for each one. Thank you. So I think Dr. Nwako would like to contribute, and I'll take Dr. Nwako first. And sir, you have 2 minutes. Dr. Nwako, are you on?
This app is a bit funny, especially if you're using it for the first time. If somebody else wants to contribute, can you indicate by putting up your hands, and Damola would call you?
Okay.
Then wait for Dr. Nwako to come back on.
Yeah, I think Professor Alo may want to contribute, as he sent quite an amount of contribution on the chat. So Professor Alo, would you like to contribute? 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Damola. Long time to see your face after so many years. It's
long time, Prof.
Okay, it's on this issue of environmental impostors within the entire gamut of environmental governance in Nigeria. And Okoro has said it, fully aware of efforts we have done for almost 30 years, trying to streamline certification of environmental practitioners in Nigeria. At some point, we succeeded in getting the Federal Ministry of Environment, who was the only accrediting organ at that time, apart from DPR. they insisted that you got to have NES stamp before you could practice. It got to a point where, you know, the FEPA Center, which I ran at that time, was designated as the only place you could be trained before you could practice. So there was some order in who could practice environmental management in Nigeria. But right now, virtually all the agencies are accrediting, and I don't know how you, Damola, and your colleagues in Chevron and all the places are able to coordinate all these things. So many people will come to you carrying different certificates. Whereas what we are admonishing, and that's why I'm glad that it's a major hot topic here this afternoon, is that the practitioners bill, the Nigerian practitioners bill, should get to be passed and turned into an act as quickly as possible so that we can put some order into the practice in Nigeria. Part of the problem we have is that people who don't know a hoot about these things are consulting for agencies. It's okay, all over the world, there are usually several different agencies managing the environment. So there's no harm in having DPR, FME, NOSDRA, NIMASA, everybody, fine. But the thing is that let's have a one-stop shop, as using the term coming from mobile. Mobile is the people who have one-stop shops. Have a one-stop shop for us to be able to accredit who can practice, who can be engaged to do environmental practice for you. It's the only way we can ensure that we raise standards. It's the only way we can ensure that we do the right things in improving our environment. So right now, there are waste managers, there are EIA practitioners, there are auditors, there are various kinds of different groups. People who do not, everybody assumes that environment is an all-comers game, and that because it's so wide, therefore they can do anything. So I want us to use this opportunity to say that yes, we get the Nigerian Institute of Environmental Practitioners Bill up, passed, and it becomes a law. Of course, the NES has been pushing that, or at least let's decide on one agency accrediting and certifying people, and that agency should then be empowered, and the capacity of that agency is to be able to screen and select the right people to run matters of environmental management for this country. That's the little contribution I want to add. Thank you.
Unmute yourself, Damola. Unmute yourself.
Yes, good to hear from Prof. Prof has been in the business for golden years, and to think that the issue we have now, we were having it then, it makes it more important for us not to just talk about it, but to push for the action. So is Dr. Nwako ready? Is it online now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we
online?
can. Yes, you are online.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Damola.
Yes, sir, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, my contribution will be on the issue of multiplicity of agencies regulating the environmental sector. This has been an issue for the past 42 years. And it's not an issue that cannot be solved. And Charles Okolo suggested a simple way of doing it, as is done in the US, between the EPA and other agencies, like the Mineral Management Service. You just have to enter an MOU between the core agency and the sub-agencies. For instance, Minister of Environment can identify the roles and responsibilities of a particular agency in respect of each area of authority, like the DPR. We try to have an MOU with Minister of Environment in those days, way to resolve the issue. That's on the question of inter-agency conflicts. The other one is issue of quack environmentalists. I think Professor Law has fully dealt with this. We need to have that Nigerian Environmental Practitioners Bill passed so that that institution can be the sole accredited agency for practitioners. I think I have other things, but let me stop here now, since I have only 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Hello?
Thank you very much, sir, for that contribution. Yet again, we've heard that these problems that we have raised again have been on for a long time, and now is the time to act. And there's been a lot of talk, and I think now is the time that we act. Do we have any other one? Okay, we have Dr. Mutiaka. Let's take Dr. Mutiaka's contribution.
Damola, you are surrounded by professors, please. Professor Mutiaka.
Professor.
Please, she's forgiven.
Professor Mutiaka.
It's been 20 years since we made contact. Thank you, Damola. Just 2 quick contributions. We can see that we have an intractable problem. It's a challenge, like Dr. Wanko has said, that has lasted for 42 years. And sadly, why we bother about the multiplicity of governance systems, the persistent environmental problems are increasing all over the country. So we are at the critical point of taking very strategic actions. One is to pass our bill, but passing our bill is not enough, because we know that the political and economic process can spring surprises. Yes, we are hopeful, but as we have started this conversation, I think that NES has the muscle and the space to attract and invite non-state actors like the companies that Damola represents. It is time for them to lend their voice in the matter of changing the governance system. They are actually the ones that suffer the impact. So I think at this forum, it would be nice. Mr. Okoye has been on both sides. We want to invite all stakeholders, not just to be participants in webinars and conversations, but to join hands at this time with NES so that we can provide the advocacy, pressure, and lobby that is needed to bring all groups to this umbrella that we want. I think that would be the best thing for this country. Thank you for the opportunity.
I think Itama Eramosele would like to make a contribution. If you're on. Is it on?
If we have a lawyer in the house, we have a lawyer. We have a lawyer. Okay, go ahead, and then we would like to hear a legal perspective to some of the suggestions put on the table. Damola, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Is the timer online or is muted?
It's online. I can see he's unmuted.
Okay, I'll read.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah. I would read out his. Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Can you hear me? The network is kind of shaky a little bit.
Yes,
right?
we can.
It's good to be in this platform, and I thank the organizers. So if I'm breaking, I think you have my comments there, so you can help me read it out. But my comment is
okay. I think you're breaking
around having some form of lobbying group to put some pressure to implement all the good.
Contribution which he posted is a suggestion for NES to consider lobbying associated or like-minded organization, putting pressure on the government to act on the issue of multi-regulations and grant NES some powers. I don't know how that would work. We seem to be putting a lot on NES today, and we pray that NES will rise up to the task of fulfilling all we have put on them. Any other contributions that we can take? Please, let me just put something on the chat as we round up now. Like Dr. Bassi said, do we have a lawyer in our midst? Because sometimes I've learned, I work a lot with lawyers. You would say everything you want to say, do everything you want to do, and the lawyers come and say, the learned persons come and say you can't do it. So can the lawyers, is there anyone here that can guide us? Okay, it doesn't seem like we have a lawyer in our midst. So as we begin to round up, yes, is someone talking? Do we have someone's contribution?
Sorry, can I make some addition, Engineer Okoro?
Okay, sir. Yes, we're going back to the panelists. So I think at this point, we'll just go back to the panelists and we'll have their closing remarks on each of the other contributions other participants have made and the questions. So I'll start with Engineer Okoro.
Good. let me pose a teaser. That teaser is this, because so far in this discussion, we are talking about NES, Nigerian Environmental Society. Fantastic. That's what it is now. But I want to believe that if we have the Nigerian Institute of Environmental Practitioners set up, that NES will disappear and everybody, it will be taken over, it will be enshrined or absorbed by the Institute, which is going to be a bigger issue. I believe, yes, there is need for collaboration. There is need for this one-stop shop. The Institute of Environmental Practitioners can be vested with authority to coordinate all the existing regulators. They are all environmentalists. You cannot be an environmental regulator and you're not an environmentalist. So it's presumed that if you're a regulator, you are a member of, or you will strive to become registered by the Institute of Environmental Practitioners. in which case the subject of governance, certification, and all that is easier to coordinate by the institute, pulling members or setting councils, setting boards across the country. So it's not like if it's only an institute that runs it. The institute is made up of members from DPR, members from NOSDRA, members from Federal Ministry of Environment, and indeed all the other regulators, including the MASA. And there are a multitude of organizations, but it will come under one umbrella, and we can work out a process by which the institute executes its functions, making sure that things are done rightly. The idea of multiple certifications, as is happening today, can be avoided. The idea of multiple regulations can be avoided because once it is set up as a national standard, national regulation, everybody works with that. So we're not going to have NESDRA regulations, NOSDRA regulation, Federal Ministry of Environment regulations, DPR regulation, and all of it. We have one. It's a national database. It's a national guideline. It's a national policy, national rules. Everybody works towards it. It is possible. It is doable. But we must disabuse our mind from thinking that it's only those in the NES that will become the members of the institute. Once the institute is created, we are working that out for the nation. It's for all of us. It's for this country. But the idea is to have a managed process to deliver environmental stewardship in this country. So I know it will work. That's my view. I have tried to create an awareness for us to know that it's an enormous task ahead, and we must rise to it and be ready to collaborate with everybody to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Engineer Okoro. I'd like to have Professor Nuhu's closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Damola. My closing remarks.
We'll go through all the panelists for the final contribution. Professor Nuhu.
Yes. First, let us be more integrated among all the environmentalists and also support the passage of the bill and signing of this bill so that we'll be more coherent and more harmonized. The second is adoption of best practices in various segments. And then, of course, education, continuous professional development should be encouraged. And I want to commend the president of NES for this webinar series. Let us continue. Let us keep talking. Let us keep educating ourselves. There's a lot more we could do if we communicate among all environmental professionals. It will reduce the suspicious. It will eliminate the domineering concept, and then it will bring more of inclusiveness. And that's the way to go. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Let's have Dr. Mogo, please. Let's have your rounding comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And I really have to close this by saying a big thank you for organizing this. I think we've started action already. We've been saying that the time for action is now, and we have started. For the president of NES to have called this, we've rolled, the ball is already rolling. It's for us to decide the direction it's going to roll to. And I am also considering comments by other people, like the change of name. You know, I was just processing through, my brain was just thinking about it. And I said that, oh, like we have Institute of Transportation that recently we got it chartered. Surveyors, accountants, maybe we have to decide actually if it's necessary to change the name, and it may be necessary because institute sounds more, you know, much more like it actually, that this is a group that is going to be able to put down the rules that must be followed, you know. And it's so important that the bill will follow the bill and get it passed, because if we have that means we can really buy it in a way. If what if we now decide to certify people and there is no law back in NEST now? You want to now take actions, negative actions against somebody or a group that is not really qualified to be there in the environmental corridor, and you don't have any bill backing you. You can imagine that we may not really go far. But if we have this bill passed, it will go a long way. And in thinking about the environment, I also want that we consider the marine environment so critical, because it's actually the next frontier of economic development, and we know we have more resources in the marine environment than we even have in the terrestrial. So it's of equal importance, if not even more, than the terrestrial environment. So when we are talking about environmental protection, we have to consider the marine environment so much. And if we are also to now make NEST stronger, we have to have is it divisions or departments, or anyhow we can situate it, whereby we have experts in this particular area, experts in the other area, so that we'll be able to really speak as all-round environmentalist. So we can now classify that this is now an expert in this area or that area, because no person, just like the environment is so wide, no single person can be an authority in all aspects of environmental management. So we have to consider that it will be a huge setback if we don't look at that area. Having said that, I have to thank everyone, and we continue writing the book, and I'm sure we get to conclude it one time. And I'm also advocating that we should have this meeting, this conversation more often. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So
thank you.
We'll take Engineer Lowoyo.
Yeah, thank you, Damola, for the effective moderation of this webinar. I would want to just say and mention two important things in rounding up. The first one relates to issue of standards. If sustainability will be our focus and our goal, then we need to be able to begin to evolve standards that regulate practice. The word practitioners are, sound very omnibus. We need to be able to actually define who an environmental practitioner is from all the very wide groups and definitions that we have. That would be key. Second point is what everybody seems to have alluded to, the need for the environmental society to take on more responsibility towards pursuing the passage of the bill. If we don't have any institute, we're not likely to be able to govern the environmental space, perhaps with just a society. I think, as many people have suggested, it needs to be created under perhaps an institute that will be able to regulate and will be able to accredit and also will be able to certify. I believe very strongly we have the opportunity now. And lastly, concerning the multiplicity of agencies, the agencies need to be more collaborative in their practices than what we currently have. And emphasis must go beyond revenue generation if indeed we must focus on how our best practices in environmental management should be. I want to thank the organizers again, and I want to seriously believe that these talks should go on. The president has already promised that this will be on a monthly basis. I think if we can sustain this, then it will help us in achieving goal in quick. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much, Engineer Lowoyo. I'll encourage everyone to go through the chats and the comment section. There's been a lot of active contribution going on there. We can't take any more. We like to keep to time. So just to round up all that has been said and the contributions that has been made today, I'll still go back to the 3 key areas that we mentioned, looking at the different agencies and not revenue generation. Also, for the need to have competent practitioners. And I'll just go back a bit to the first one. The National Assembly have several bills in front of them around environmental management and environmental practices. And we do go for the public hearings, and we see the agencies coming out against each other. It's almost like a competition. We look forward to a time where we go to the National Assembly and everybody is congregating in alignment of what needs to be done for environmental protection. In the case of the practitioners, we understand the work that is ongoing to have the Institute of Environmental Practitioners in place to regulate the practice of environmental consultancy. That would really help in ensuring the quality of the actions that we have and the commitment to working them coming from experts. And thirdly, we spoke about environmental awareness, and it's very important. We all have that responsibility. We all are accountable to promote environmental awareness in our space, whether it's in our office, in our homes, the community, where we are, the institutions where we work. People don't think of the environment as their responsibility. They think the environment would always be there to support them. So the awareness is very important, and we are the champion of that. So to this end, I would pass it on to the president of the NES, Dr. Bassi, to round this up. It's been interesting, it's been exciting, and getting in touch with all the people that we haven't seen in years, and to know that they are still active is very encouraging. So Dr. Bassi.
You and sustain your their years. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Damola. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can see me, but certainly I'm sure you can hear my voice. I am totally excited. I am really humbled and very, very grateful. My senior colleagues are all around me, and I am motivated to continue with these conversations. Interestingly, as we were rounding up, something to my mind. I think the recording will be sent to the National Assembly because this is the voice of the people. There are no vested interests, individual vested interests here. It is all about the environment. We need commitment. We need understanding. We need to be able to connect the dots. We also need certification for environmental practitioners, and that would only be by an independent body like the Nigerian Environmental Society, as is done elsewhere. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. I hope that with the connections we have been able to establish today, some of us have all the money to support, some have the expertise, some have the political networks. We even have entertainment personalities here. Ibinabo Febrifimer, I saw her name and I've spoken with her. We want to see billboards across the nation talking about environmental issues, showing environmental issues, so that our younger ones would internalize some of the things we're talking about. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, once again, on behalf of all the members of the Nigerian Environmental Society, I thank you all so much for coming, sparing 2 hours of your time. The conversations continue like I have pledged. It is going to be once every month, and I please